So it says we're live.
Hello, Internet.
Hello, Internet. I still have a status bar. Okay, we're good. We're on and popping.
Awesome.
So this week for episode 178 of Outrage Factory, I have with me Mr. Wesley Scott. We were talking about it right before the podcast because all his social media has his middle name in it. So I refer to him as Wesley David Scott, all three names, because I feel like
David Scott.
It makes you feel more professional. It sounds like Sir Wesley David Scott. Like if somebody's knighted, you always say the middle name too.
Yeah.
So it always reminds me of that.
I am blessed with having three first names in that sense, and I have been mistaken for all three on a regular basis. So.
That's funny because it's like, you know how you're not supposed to trust someone with two first names. I feel like if you have three first names, it kind of just shoots through the black hole and you could trust them again.
Just triple down, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I feel like I could trust you, so I'm going to say that's a sound theory.
Yeah. It's the beard, you know. Margaret Thatcher had this thing about not trusting men with beards, but I think she was quite mistaken. So.
Yeah, she's obviously hasn't been around for the last 5 years because she could trust two people who don't have beards. I don't know if you call this a beard. I call it my Spanx for my double chin is what I use it as. Scruff. Yeah, it's just to cover the double chin because I hate it. It's itchy and it's uncomfortable, especially in the summer.
Oh, really? Yeah. I don't mind beards. I think the neck beard is where the problem is.
That's
the issue.
Yeah, I think it's just because I get hot and sweaty at work, and the masks weren't helping anything. As soon as I got any a little bit longer here, it's just like, ooh.
I used to have one about to here, and I had this nice wave going.
Nice.
It was tricky. Yeah, I had the wizard going on, the full wizard beard.
Dope. So. Speaking of masks, have you been out in the world raw dogging it yet? Since on July 1st they lifted the mask thing.
You know, we've been indoor kids for the last 2 years, pretty much. My partner and I, and I have 2 doses now and of Pfizer, and my partner has 1.
Pfizer.
Yeah. And generally speaking, double vaxxed and relaxed, but
nice.
I feel hesitant still, especially with all this talk about the Delta variant. And I know that's me being paranoid a bit, but I was at the dollar store today for the first time in a while, and I was just walking around and I saw about half the people not wearing masks. And I was just like, Jesus Murphy, stay the hell away from me. But, again, if the vaccine numbers are there, if public opinion is starting to shift, whatever. I mean, I'm a musician. I go by the stage name of Zulu Panda, for those who don't know. And I have toured across Canada, a bit of the United States and China. And I love performing and being with people and being in public spaces. And I haven't been for the last 2 years. And it's made me this crazy hermit man. And I'm very excited about touring again. But at the same time, I am paranoid. But we'll see how it goes. That's all I can say for now. So.
Yeah, I would say out here, because I live in Burnaby, full disclosure. Wesley, you're in Vancouver, right? South Down? Yep. And in Burnaby, everybody's still wearing the mask, except for because I went to the mall today and I'm not wearing the mask because I'm I got 2 vaccines. It's been almost a month since I had my second dose. So it's let me free. But if I go to a store and they still have a sign up that says that they need a mask, then I'm I'm not so I want to be free and not wear the mask that I'm willing to get in a little awkward altercation. So I'll just pop it on and then go to that store and then take it off when I go out.
Yeah.
And
I think at the mall, the thing we have to get past right now is just beating on each other like we were ages ago. I mean, the regulations are the regulations. If somebody's not following the regulations, fine, crack down on it. But, if they are vaccinated, if we have an open, open face policy, I mean, you can't blame people for following, the regulations we have.
Exactly.
But at the same time, too, get out of my space. There was this guy today he was about, I don't know, 2 steps behind me. I'm like, get back.
Yeah.
But again, probably me being paranoid. And outdoors, it's supposed to be fine for most things at this point. That's what I heard, at least. I have, to be honest, I haven't listened to the Bonnie hearings, Bonnie presentations in a little while. Dr.
Well,
Bonnie Henry,
they're
that
not
is.
that clearly worded if you're looking for it to clear things up for you. They're a
Yeah.
little bit lawyer ease when it comes to straightforwardness.
Well, and I think the position the BC government in particular, but I would imagine most of Canada and the world is at this point, is about mitigating crisis. So people are still going to get COVID, obviously. So the question is, how can we limit it to a point at which our hospitals can handle it? And that's the policy. So, and you know, they got to keep businesses going, and they got to keep people at least satisfied enough. So.
Yeah, exactly. I think one of the hardest things for people to do is, because it feels like everybody felt like they were personally deputized as a sheriff to like uphold all the mask mandates and like
where's your mask,
all that stuff. Exactly, being like, and everybody's just gotta let go of that, and they're not really, because everybody got like a little bit of taste of the power, and it's like, and I got to admit, like when I see somebody doing something wrong, it takes every ounce of my being to like hold it back. Like if another example is someone has their dog off leash in an on leash trail, and you're like, oh, like the dog's just going in the rivers, wrecking the spawning areas and stuff, and it's like, don't you guys see the signs? And then you're like, oh, I'm just the cantankerous old man now. Great.
Those clouds. I don't know. Like, I'm the type of guy who likes walking around with a cold brew around outside, and you know, the fact that I can't do that in many places in Vancouver, for instance, bugs me. But at the same time, too, you know, it's a question of how much are you going to respect rules and how important those rules are. Obviously, when it comes to masks and stuff, it's like, again, we have the policies, we're doing this thing. If you don't like it, stay away from people. Like, that's a big thing, I guess. I mean, I don't know. But that's kind of a stupid, crappy thing to say, but you know, you can still maintain social distance. You know, I mean, you can't in certain areas, like on the bus or the airport. But nobody's forcing you to fly to Tahiti right now.
I feel like the personal distance is the one I'm gonna let go of last, because I don't know what it was. Like, I guess I've always kind of not liked people in my space. I guess everybody's like that, but it's just like having people never be that close to you is always nice. And it's like, but it's also kind of weird because it kind of hyper stimulated your like spider sense, I guess you could say, because like you were saying, there's a guy 2 steps behind you, and the whole time you're like, oh, what's going on? What's he doing? Like, why are you so close to me? And then like you'll be in the store looking at someone and something, and like someone will walk up beside you to look at something. You're like, well, obviously this guy wants to murder me, so it's going to be a fight to the death in 10 seconds. And you're like, oh wait, he's just getting close. And it's like, on one hand, it's so nice to be like, just go like this and in public and be like, so much space, and like not smelling people's bad breath or BO. That's really good too. Like, not
I can't imagine what it's going to be like going back into a mosh pit, for instance. It's going to be.
I think I'm done. I think I'm too old for mosh pits. 40, 41. I'll hang it up. I'm sorry. Maybe on the odd wedding, if I'm a little sauced up and I'm feeling extra dancy, I'll get into the mosh pit. But I think for now I'm going to retire, because it's like skateboarding. Like, I quit skateboarding when I was about 30. Like, I was never good at it, but I quit riding one because it's just like, you get to a point where like, all right, if I do injure myself, there's no justifying it. Like, if I'm in a mosh pit and I twist my ankle bad enough that like I have to skip work, they'll be like, so what happened? You'll be like, well, I was in a mosh pit. And they'll be like, well, aren't you an adult? And you'll be like, well, yeah, but it was a really jamming tune.
Don't you know better? Oh my goodness. Oh, well, Dale, before we get into things today, I do want to start off by saying that you are in rare form, in the sense that you have chosen the least qualified person to talk about any of these things with. I am not an athlete. I am not on TikTok. I don't smoke a whole lot of weed. And I'm not a person of color or Indigenous. And so we have selected some topics today, which I think that potentially we are unqualified to talk about. But I am willing to wade into the waters and give it my best go in the progressive orange sense that I bring to the table.
Okay. The only section I got you beat there is I have a TikTok account, but I hate it. Like I don't hate my account. It's funny because I'll go on TikTok because I put like clips of all the podcasts on. So like I'll do minute clips. Oh, and TikTok's going to 3 minutes. So
yeah, that's okay. Before we get crazy about it, TikTok. Why are all the videos that I see that I guess people are reposting, why are they all out of sync audio wise?
Oh, they are? They're not for me.
I swear like 50% of the videos I see that people upload to Facebook or Twitter, the audio is out of sync with the mouth movements.
It might be that you're seeing them somewhere else. Like it might be like the transfer from, because if you're looking on Facebook and not in the app, I would tell you to like open up the app to look at those, but I don't want to do that to you.
So it's just a garbage download, basically, is what you're saying.
It's also a garbage app. And it might have something to do with the hardwiring of even the app or like the translation from TikTok to Facebook and stuff. Like it's not one of those things where people are like, if the engineers in charge were like, there's a latency, they would like rip it all down and rebuild it just to get rid of it. I feel like that's something that they'll just let go. But I haven't noticed the latency thing.
Fair enough.
But,
well,
yeah.
Just my crappy phone, I guess.
Yeah, it could even be your phone or But so they're going to 3 minutes, which will kind of be nice because it'll make like a heftier clip for the podcast because some of them I've had to edit down to be under the minute barrier and then they get kind of choppy. But that's like the style that the kids like nowadays is the super choppy. Like you watch any of these.
But at that level of video editing, though, you're basically making mini movies. And the amount of energy that goes into some of this production is just incredible. I mean, especially that one guy he did all the funny Facebook marketplace conversations. Lubalin, I believe it is. He's out of Montreal. Just the funniest guy. But the amount of production for like a minute video, it just blows my mind. And,
it does take a while.
Yeah. Hey, so on topic, this guy who's been recruited, the NHL names the 19-year-old TikToker as a special advisor.
Josh Richards.
Have you followed this guy's TikTok before?
When I saw that the NHL was hiring someone to do dumb videos and it wasn't me making a whole bunch of money, of course I was mad enough to go search him out and be like, what's this guy got that I don't got? And he's very pretty. So I give it to him.
40 million followers pretty.
And he's a very handsome fella, and I'll give him that. And he's the guy, his name is Josh Richards. I'll give you a little background. He's the guy who started the Sway House in LA, which was this guy's a marketing genius, actually, if you think about it. Like his videos are dumb. It's like him lip syncing to videos and like doing like quasi interviews, but he's like a hyperdrive marketing guy. Like he started Sway House in LA, which was basically they rented a mansion and they would throw parties, and he just invited a whole bunch of TikTok influencers and stuff to live there so that they could kind of like feed off each other and do challenges and stuff and up their TikTok numbers. Then he started Cross-Check Media with Mark Wahlberg. I didn't look into that. These are just some of the things he started. They started an energy drink, and he started a podcast with Dave Portnoy, and that called BFFs, and they do that. And everybody knows who Dave Portnoy is. So attaching your name to him, like you would think it would hurt your brand, but he just got hired by the NHL. And the first thing he did with the NHL was an interview with Gary Bettman. And it's, I just watched a couple seconds of it on YouTube, and it's about as cringy as you would expect it to be, it being Gary Bettman. So yeah.
Do you think he deserves the role? Do you think he's going to be good for the NHL? Do you think he's going to get
Uh,
young people interested in hockey again?
oh God, I don't know. I think like it's not going to hurt. Like 40 million followers is a substantial number, and the fact that he's just talking about hockey is going to introduce a lot of people be like who maybe like never knew about hockey, be like, oh, I like hockey. But it's also this thing where he's got 40 million viewers, so he's one of those people that's popular enough that people hate him without knowing anything about him just because he's popular. Like, I don't know what you would call it, maybe the Nickelback effect,
Oh,
where it doesn't matter if you like or hate what they provide. It's just that they got so popular and you were kind of introduced to it against your will. So it was like forced upon you that you start hating them. So maybe it'll drive some potential viewers to hockey, but like hockey, NHL's TikTok is very on, like, it's like, I'd never seen the TikTok, the official NHL TikTok. So I went and looked at that too. And it's all like, young and hip and like abrasive and obnoxious and like hip hop. I don't know. It's like it's so hard to like put your finger on what it is, but it's like once you watch like one or two videos, you know exactly what it is because it's just like all those other like obnoxious videos and stuff that are on
they
there.
should really own it and make it like a really throwback 1990s America's funniest home videos clip series,
Oh my
and
god, that'd
just
be the
like have like
best.
hockey bloopers and stuff.
And then like have the like boing
Yeah,
noise and like
exactly.
whoop when a guy
Yeah.
slips. That would be
Pow.
okay. Well, I'm gonna edit this out. You're gonna start that TikTok and you're
Oh
gonna
my
make $1
goodness.
million.
Yeah.
It'll be like NHL bloopers with Wesley. And then you could be like all over the top. You'd be like, hi, my name's Wesley. You ready to see some clips about the NHL?
Zany dad hockey. Oh my goodness. I already hate myself.
Oh my god. That would be so fun. Maybe I should do it.
Yes, you should.
We should
Yes.
just pivot this podcast to just be like over the top.
Oh man.
Get some young viewers.
I am surprisingly excited about hockey this year. I mean, I am not a hockey guy, but you know, the few games I have caught, I've just been really enthusiastic about. And Carey Price is a class act, and I just really enjoy his playing and his attitude towards life. So it's it's been intriguing, if nothing else, for the indoor kid that I am.
It's been unfortunate, the 3 games against Tampa, because it was like the Habs were like the underdogs. They were like basically punching above their weight, and they're just heading out on top and doing good. And then they ran into Tampa, and it was like they ran into a brick wall. But
yeah,
that happens. Like Tampa is the returning champions, and they're like 18 million over the cap that they were to be the returning champions. So it's like, I know I'm not going to get into it because I talked about it before, like how they had Kucherov, who wasn't on the roster in the regular season, but they got him after this for just the postseason. So his salary cap didn't count to get to the or his salary didn't count for the salary cap. So they basically made their team up to 85 million or whatever it was. And then they had 2 guys come in whose salaries were 18 million. So they're like way over. That's how they got over. It's not against the rules. It's a loophole thing. So everybody
but this
who
is the question here. So like you and I are talking about this. We are not of the TikTok market share that they're referring to with this young fella. How is he going to make this conversation we just had relevant to 19-year-old audiences? Like that's the thing. I mean, TikTok is so quick and you know, witty or stupid. How are you going to make hockey, which is a game that's invested over a period of time with multiple players and people talking about fantasy leagues and stuff? You know, how's that gonna merge and mesh with TikTok in any sort of reasonable way? Do you think this kid's got any longevity working for the NHL?
No, I don't think this has any longevity because, like I said, he's like a hyper marketing guy, and all of the things that he does, like he'll get into one thing, like the Sway House is already done. Like he did that for a bit, and then as soon as it cooled off, he jumped out and jumped into something else. Like that's the problem. Is the NHL is. It's like of the 4 major sports, it's one of the ones where people get invested in. Like people's favorite teams are the same team as their dad. Like I like the Oilers because my grandpa liked the Oilers. Like I swayed around. Like I'm an abnormal fan because I was like a fan of the Oilers when I was a kid. Then I was a fan of the Canucks. Then I went back to the Oilers because I'm unashamedly a fair weather fan. Like as soon as the team sucks, I'm like, all right, guys, you're not giving me investment dollars. And so I went back to the Oilers and stuff. But most people who are like, they pick a team and they're ride or die with that team forever. So some like 19-year-old kid coming in and being like, oh, finger snaps. That just made me sound so old. This guy, he like snaps his fingers, snap, snap, snap. And then, so I think it'll like the hope I have for it is that it kind of shows some kids the tip of the iceberg, and then they see it, like they get exposed to the NHL, and then they're like, oh, what's this? I'll look at it. And then they kind of go off on their own and get more invested into it.
Has this kid outed himself for which team he likes?
Oh, yeah, he's a Toronto hack, which is obnoxious. It's like if you're a football
fan. Yeah, I read
fan,
he was from Toronto.
Yeah. So. I think I saw him like he was wearing a Tampa Bay Lightning jersey. So he's obviously he's like, I'm a fair weather fan, so I can't give him too much shit, but it's like he's a championship fair weather fan. So he likes whoever's doing really good at the moment, so he doesn't have to cheer for someone who's losing. So that's like, yeah.
The other thing for Toronto fans is you've read the hockey sweater, that classic story.
Yeah.
So it's like, if you're a Habs fan, you can never cheer for Toronto. If you're a Toronto fan, you can never cheer for the Habs. It's I just feel like there's a lot of that in Canada. I personally, again, indoor kid, don't have a team preference. Grew up watching a bit of the Oilers, met Gretzky once.
Oh, really?
Moving to Victoria and subsequently Vancouver, I enjoy the Canucks, but I mean, it's hard not to be a fair weather fan with the Canucks. But I do have a soft spot for Montreal. I really enjoy Montreal.
They are the league's winningest team. Like they have the most Stanley Cups of any team in the NHL. And they are, when the league started, I guess everybody who listens to this will probably know, but they're an original 6 team. And that means 100 years ago when the NHL started, there was only 6 teams. It was Montreal, Toronto, Chicago, New York Rangers, Boston Bruins. Who did I miss?
I don't know, man. You're talking to an indoor kid.
Yeah. Detroit Red Wings. There we go.
In the days of yore, when hockey was young and no one wore helmets.
Yeah. So I don't know. I feel like there should be like a highlights TikTok for the NHL. Like you could just go on and like that's how NHL would lean itself to TikTok. Like the way Don Cherry had Rock'em Sock'em Hockey, but it's just like not necessarily clips of hits because they don't want to like glorify hits as much as they used to, but like you could do goals and stuff like.
Yeah, well, I mean, sports bloopers are achievement. Remember those VHS tapes back in the glory days, so to speak? Yeah, you just need like a TikTok that's basically you need the America's Funniest Home Video model to come back in a TikTok setting, and you'll just make $1 million bazillion dollars. So there
you go. You could be the next Bob Saget, Wesley.
Yeah. Well, yeah, no, not with these looks, but
yeah.
What is going into our next topic, which I think is relevant. I just want a quick segue.
Yeah.
How does the NHL feel about weed generally? Marijuana, pot, cannabis?
I'm pretty sure. Well, in the 80s, the NHL had a huge coke problem. Yeah. And it was kind of went under the radar and they never told. So I think the NHL is kind of old school where I could be wrong, but I feel like they kind of have a don't ask, don't tell policy with like weed. Because I know some of like, there's always jokes about like the young kids in the training camps smoke weed and stuff. And I know there's jokes about Steve Yzerman blasting dubs, but he's not a player anymore. So I would say off the top of my head, not having any like evidence to back this up, I'd say the NHL is okay with weed.
So it's interesting by contrast that the Olympics have such strict regulations regarding
Yeah.
weed and I suppose drugs and even body composition in general.
Yeah.
You know, of course, we're talking now about Sha Carrie Richardson, who's basically going to
That's how
have to
you say
miss
it.
the Olympics. Yeah, I think it's either Shikari or Shikari, but I think Shikari is the pronunciation I found.
Yeah.
But you know, Sha Carrie Richardson's to miss the Olympics because of basically smoking a doob, as you said.
And
And
it's tragic because she said her official statement was like, I know what I did. I know it was wrong, but my mother had passed away recently and I was using it as a coping mechanism. And you're like, oh, just let her
yeah,
play in the
well, and
Olympics.
again, the statement that really hit me is I'm only human. I just run a little faster.
That's a good
And
statement.
like even
Yeah.
like Biden said, for instance, that you know rules are rules, but at the same time too, he said that you know he thought that her statement was very well delivered.
Hmm.
So
Well, I mean, unless you're Joe Biden's son who smokes crack, he's not going to let you get away with it. Like he fired a whole bunch of people in his party who smoked weed. But I think one of the things is like, it's like now, if you look, if they made all these rules today, they probably wouldn't have weed for the Olympics because there's so much of like, at least North America where it's legal. But you got to remember the Olympics are international
yep.
where some countries drugs are so illegal you'll like get the death penalty for trafficking and stuff. So you can't really be like, well, this runner from the US smokes some weed, so we should let her get away with it, where in a different country like I don't know, some
Yeah, and I mean
other
Canada's already been talking about this for years. I mean, of
hmm
course, with the snowboarder Ross Ribiotti, I believe his name is, right?
yeah, Ribigati, it's a hard one. And it
Yeah.
was like 20 years ago, so I can't remember.
Well, and again, that's it. So we've been having this discussion for ages, and now it's in
Hmm.
an American context, and not only an American context, but regarding a woman of color. And so it's a question of whether or not this is also a bias, or if
Hmm.
this is just too stringent of a policy. I don't know about you, but the times I have been high, there is no way I'm running about. I am useless. You know, I might stumble and get a pizza, but I'm not going anywhere. You know, it
Yeah.
certainly isn't enhancing my ability to run.
Well, the thing is now, like that was like when I smoked weed when I was a kid, like I just whatever somebody had, I would smoke it. And then I would have an existential crisis and I would have to worry about my life choices and stuff. But now the way they have it now, it's like the weed they have is they have like um I can't remember what it's called. Like the layman's terms is they have couch weed and do stuff weed. So it's like there's some weed that like makes you more energetic and it makes you concentrate a lot more. So I heard like a lot of basketball players will smoke weed so that they can focus on the geometry of the game and their shots and their technique more. So in that sense, I could see how um
the chemistry
it
of
would be
cannabis
like
is not something I know much about,
yeah,
but
I could
you
definitely
know,
see how it would be an unfair advantage for like say she smokes weed and then someone from like the country where weed is like pretty much a death sentence, there's no way they're getting it. It could give her an
yeah.
unfair advantage. And I think another thing, like I was saying before, if they made these rules now, it would be probably wouldn't be illegal. But when they made these rules, like if you look at the list of stuff that's banned for the Olympics, like alcohol's on there and stuff too. And
Well, and this was something I wanted to talk to you about as well.
mhm,
So I mean, again, this is kind of weird. We should be talking to people in the Black community about how they feel
yeah.
about these issues, of course. But there is a special swim cap that was designed for people who of African American um, being who have special swim cap needs for their hair.
Mhm.
And this model of swim cap is not allowed in the Olympics. And so the question is whether or not these policies are up to date with modern specs, or are we still going back to the specs that were used in the 1940s, for instance? You know,
Yeah,
why
that's
are
yeah.
Olympic specs? Why do we have these ridiculous specs for the Olympics all the time? And are they
I think
just being
it's
used for
yeah.
certain people?
I think what it is they had like the thing with the Olympics is the actual event is only 4 years. So probably changing anything like the swim caps, like I'm just spitballing here. Like I don't know what like the secret backroom like reasoning for not letting the swim caps go through is. I think it might have something to do with just like the approval rate to get something like this pushed through would be so long, and dealing with the bureaucracy of the Olympic Committee. Like that's what I'm hoping it is. I'm hoping it's not that they're just not approving these because of the athletes that need to use them and it's some sort of prejudice. I'm hoping that it's just like they're slow bureaucrats and they can't just approve
Yeah,
something.
I think the truth of the matter is that the Olympics are regimented to a fault, and that they have
Yeah.
not taken into account their own prejudice, even with regards to the development of future policies. It's just very stagnant and rigid, and they add policy as opposed to adapt policy. That's my speculation. I'm not necessarily informed. I've never worked for the Olympics, and I'm not a marginalized individual. I am the
This
dude who's on the
podcast
couch.
this podcast is about making educated guesses.
Yeah,
That's the
I'm
nicest
talking out
way
of
I
my
could
ass.
say
Like
it.
let's face it, I'm talking out of my ass
Yeah.
when it comes to this. But at the same time, too, yeah. I mean, were you in Vancouver during the Olympics?
No,
2010?
I lived here before and I left and then I came back after.
Yeah.
I came
So
back in
like
13.
even during the Olympics, they put so many restrictions on the city. Like if you wanted to protest the Olympics, you had to protest in special protest zones that were so far away from everything. And like I loved the 2010 Olympics. That was right, man. That was fun to see. I was in Victoria at the time, but people were celebrating like mad, and it was great to watch. But they basically bust out all the homeless people from Vancouver, and there were very strict policies on the city in order to make things happen. And so there's huge restrictions on the players, there's huge restrictions on the cities, there's huge cost to everyone involved. And I don't know, I find the Olympics very frustrating. So I kind of confine myself to like very specific sports watching for the Olympics, because otherwise I just get like, oh my god, so much wasted corporate mess. So
yeah. And it's like the athletes don't get paid. So there's that whole thing you can get into. And it's like there's so much. I don't know. It's like you could start Outrage Factory Olympics and have like, I don't know, like 30 episodes just talking about all the stuff with the Olympics. Sorry, my light keeps, I think my
I'm
light's
enjoying
going
the strobe
and it
show.
just like goes orange because you could set the different color value for it. So there's like blue, orange, 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 orange. And it just like, I guess it's just like what happens when you buy a $35 light from Costco is it just switches color on you.
Well, it's
And
certainly
just,
better than this secondhand lamp I have that is literally just baking me in yellow right now. So,
well, it makes you look tan though.
yeah, for once.
It doesn't wash you out like this lamp is for me. And at least it's staying the same color and not making your forehead shiny like mine is.
It's a good glow. It's a good glow.
Yeah. Thanks. I like it a lot.
Sha Carrie Richardson, she was talking about with such optimism that she was going to be back running and going to be coming back to the Olympics in the future. And I thought that was a great way to look at it too. And I think she's a remarkable athlete. I think that the time too just blew my mind as well. I can't remember the exact number, but it's really she's a motivating figure, and I really think that it's good for people to have that. I mean, she's only 21. She's going to go far, I think, one way or another, be it on her feet or in life. So.
I mean, I do have to admit that I haven't seen her run because her event is the 100-meter dash. And I think, that's the one. Is that the one that Donovan Bailey was in? And
I believe so. He was in a couple, but yeah.
Yeah, I feel like 100-meter dash or sprint, whatever it's called, is like the drag racing of the Olympics pretty much. But that said, I'm still not as such a big fan of the Olympics that I'm watching the 100-meter sprint. Like it takes a guy like Donovan Bailey or Usain Bolt for me to even hear anything about the sprinting and the running. Like I couldn't name like Donovan Bailey's like
crazy fast.
Yeah, Donovan Bailey's from like 15 years ago, maybe, and like the next reference I have is Usain Bolt and then Sha Carrie, and like those are my three references because I know no other ones except for who was that disgraced Canadian guy? Ben something?
Again, indoor kid. I'm just going to plead ignorance here.
There was a guy who was like from Canada. He was super fast, and then he got busted taking steroids, and then they stripped his medal and stuff. And I can't for the life. Was that Donovan Bailey? No, it was Ben something. Ben. It was like when we were kids. I'm going to Google it because it's I'm not going to be able to get over this. You know how it is.
The other thing too is that, when it comes to these things, these people spend their whole lives, training for these very short-term events, and you got to give them, credit for just how committed they are to it all. I mean, so Sha Carrie Richardson, her time was 10.86 seconds. And I mean, I can't even fathom how fast that is. I want to say Donovan Bailey was I like the 8-second mark, but I don't know if that's true or not.
That's nuts. We could here. I'll Google it. Oh, by the way, that sprinter I was thinking of was Ben Johnson. I'm gonna look up Donovan.
So Donovan Bailey was 9.84 seconds.
Okay. Do you have Usain Bolt there too?
I can.
Okay, here I'll do it. 100. Are you looking that up on your brand new
9.8 or 9.58?
Dang.
So he was a good, a good chunk ahead of Donovan, but both of them are just remarkable athletes.
What was I going to say? Does she have the world record, or she was like just off the? Yeah, because that was for the time you're quoting. That was from the World Championships, wasn't it? That was just held.
Yeah.
Or the qualifier. Sorry, that was the Olympic qualifiers. She got a lot of buzz because she was like she beat the next person behind her by like a second. I think they said. I can't remember for sure, but yeah, like she's a big deal for the female running world, and she is quite fast. And the Olympics will be lesser without her. It's just like we were taught. Yeah.
It's also crazy too, just again, how stringent the Olympics are. Like how many athletes are getting tossed aside for having higher level testosterone counts. That's something
that the females.
Yeah. And like they're basically, I mean, according to the definition now, we're defining what chemically counts as a participant for Women's Olympics. And so, yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's a lot of restriction. I'm not saying that it's wrong per se. I'm not saying it's right either, but it's a lot of detail for something.
Yeah, like I feel like it's something that it's like, how what they say about good intentions, like I can't remember. The road to something is paved with good intentions. Oh, the road to ruin is paved with good intentions. Like I feel like they kind of just made these rules to test for testosterone and stuff so that they could maybe weed out people who took like HGH, like human growth hormone or stuff.
There are limitations for a reason, but there are limitations too that aren't for rational reasons. Like, wasn't there that one woman recently who was just allowed for the first time in Olympic history, allowed to breastfeed, where she wasn't allowed, or like women weren't allowed to breastfeed at the Olympics previously? I can't remember the article. But it's just, again, crazy amounts of restriction. I shouldn't say crazy per se, but like just an extreme level of restriction at the Olympics. And I mean, if you take like the guys who are in Major League Baseball, for instance, and tried to get them to play Olympic level baseball, would they even qualify with all the drugs that they're on, right? Like it's sports are just so inconsistent in terms of what the regulations are sometimes. I don't know.
I think it's just like what happened with Russia a couple years ago with their whole thing. Like that's like, because it's like you say, oh, maybe you should ease up the Olympic, just call them the Olympics. Hey, maybe ease up with all these like stringent rules that you have and all this stuff. And then Russia comes along and just
exploits
blows
everything.
it. They blow it for everybody. Like they were corrupt to the point where in the test room they had a hole cut in the wall, and they would just pass like the clean pee to the guy, and then he would give it to the doctor or
Oh
whatever.
my goodness.
And it was like bonkers level corrupt. So it's like you see that happen, and then the Olympics are like, oh, now we gotta be dicks about this because you ruined it for everybody.
Yeah, that's the other side of the coin, isn't it? I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Like I would say personally, I would say let Sha Carrie run. What they should do is like if like maybe don't let her blast dubs right before the event. But I would say if you can find out how long ago those drugs were in her system, like because marijuana, at least to me, feels like something that the beneficial effects would only be like right away where it calms you down and stuff. So like if it happened a couple weeks ago when she was dealing with her mother passing, I would say what's left in her system isn't really going to help her run.
Well, and that's the question too: is how long ago was it?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. That's the big thing.
But
It
also, I
sucks.
guess you could say like all these people who are taking CBD for like the healing attributes, like marijuana supposedly helps take down inflammation and stuff. So it could help your muscles heal after you're running. So it could actually increase your training and efficiency and stuff. So I could kind of see like I could see how marijuana would tip the scales in your favor. So it's not like I'm not going to be one of those people who's like, oh, you should just smoke weed or whatever. I'm saying, yeah, I could see how it would be beneficial for
I
the
mean,
athlete who took it
I
against
hear
someone who
what you're
didn't.
saying, Dale, but like I have
Yeah.
never really seen documentation of like somebody saying weed hasn't enhanced my sports performance.
Mm.
I mean that's just me as a layman coming in and saying, or a layperson rather, and coming in and saying, I don't see how weed is going to make that much of a difference. I mean, sure, if it did, like if there's science behind it, I'll acknowledge it. But like
Yeah.
when I think of weed, I'm not thinking of somebody in boosting their performance. I'm thinking
Yeah,
of
that's
somebody
true.
who wants to chill the hell out, right?
Yeah. I
So
mean, we would also have to like if you look at the whole CBD thing and how they have like topical like the whole
yeah,
industry's
but the
exploding
like
with
you
all these
talked about the
different
Russians. The
uses.
Russians aren't trying to hide CBD oil or
That's true.
weed. They're trying to enhance themselves with like steroids and stuff. I don't know,
Yeah.
and that's not all Russians, obviously, but like, yeah, it's
Well,
uh,
yeah, I'm not saying blowing dubs is going to make this woman the $6 billion woman. I'm just saying I could see where there would be benefits. I'm not saying they'd be great or maybe even if they would be enough to push her over the edge to win. Like cuz I feel like she would probably win even without it. I'm just for the sake of giving my opinion saying I could see how if someone has access to like weed, CBD, and all this other stuff, it would give them an edge to someone who doesn't, which is, I guess that's the whole point is you're trying to make it a level playing field for the poorer countries who have more stricter laws and stuff. So that
yeah,
would be, yeah.
yeah. I mean, again, part of it comes down to how are these restrictive rules that necessary? Um,
Hmm.
and are they due to change? And are they there for the right reasons?
Yeah, exactly. Like I think
Call me
smoking,
suspicious.
yeah, smoking weed should be legal around the world. But until it is, I could see how it's like thing that they're not going to allow in the Olympics.
So I used to work in mental health and addictions, and one thing that I learned, especially before that time, but during that time, is just how much smoking marijuana during early stages of development in youth can actually impact or induce developing schizophrenia.
Oh yeah.
And so it's not always good,
Hmm.
but I'm very much a fan of legalization or at least decriminalization.
Hmm.
And the legislation that has been directed, especially to disproportionately to poorer communities, has been astronomically high, and it's not. There's so much politicization around weed, and we just need to collectively do better and move beyond this, because this false war on drugs is not helping anyone, in my opinion. But I don't know. At the same time too, I wish some people would be careful. And it's funny because like every kid I know has a weed story, or a former kid, I should say. But like, it's one of those things that it still does impact people's health.
That's
in the same
true.
way alcohol does in a lot of ways too. So I don't know. I'm just ranting at this point, but it's the purpose of the podcast, I guess.
Yeah, like I could see what you're saying, and that would be like another reason to maybe legalize it so they can sort of science the effects weed has on mental health, and you could do experiments and stuff and figure out like, because I know one of the things, because I heard a little bit about like the schizophrenia and stuff and how weed can exacerbate it, but it's kind of like one of those things where they don't know if it, like they don't think it causes it.
There's not enough science on it. That's the thing,
exactly.
Right?
So they don't know if it would have happened without the weed, and the weed was just kind of like a catalyst thing. So they should like just do science and figure it out.
Yeah. And we're getting there slowly but surely. But at the same time too, society is becoming way more comfortable. At least Canadian society is getting way more comfortable with weed now, and people who even are against it are dabbling. So
exactly. Like, and even like with mushrooms and like other stuff like that, like they're starting to decriminalize. I was going to say legalize, but I caught myself. They're starting to decriminalize that strictly for testing too, so they could see how that affects like PTSD and other stuff like that.
Do you know anyone who microdoses?
Currently, no. I mean, I kind of wanted to try to see what would happen. Like, I mean, like we all just want to be happy, and if we can microdose and like I'm not any worryable amount of unhappy at the moment. Like I'm good. But I could, like, if it made me happier, that'd be cool. If it made colors brighter, then I could like watch superhero movies and enjoy them even more. Because that's one of my favorite part about like movies and TV shows like Loki, and I like that. So
yeah, I mean, just let people do what they want. That's a big thing for me. But
especially if it helps some people.
Yeah, and that's the thing is my things are health related more than anything else. But let's help. I feel for this girl, man. She's gonna bounce back, but she's got the whole world looking at her right now.
Yeah, and with the Olympics missing them, the hardest part about it is it's every 4 years. Like, I mean, this is kind of the one situation where it's lessened because these were supposed to happen in 2020. So now it's only going to be 3 years till the next Olympics, and she's only 21 now, so she's going to be 24 the next Olympics. So
theoretically, she can bounce back.
Yeah. Like she still has a shot to get her gold medal of her dream. Like if she was, I don't even want to guess how old athletes are when they can't go in the Olympics anymore. Like, it's one of those landmines where you're like,
don't you see most of them before the 30s, right? Like most of them are in their 20s at the very.
Like I don't want to guess how old a female runner should be before she quits sprinting, but I know
if they can do it at any age, they can do it.
That's true. Like I know sprinting would probably be like a young woman's game.
Yeah, probably.
To state a cliche. But so like I'm like maybe this is like drives her like even more, and she breaks some world records in 3 years. That'd be great.
She'll probably come back and kick everybody's butt.
I hope it doesn't like adversely affect her and bum her out to the point where she like quits training and stuff.
I mean, if she's made it this far, I doubt she's gonna give up, but that's just my speculation, or at least I hope so, man. I don't know. Again, white guys talking out of their butt here, what do we know? Right? But
like she seems pretty level-headed about it.
I mean, I used to run a little bit when I was younger, and that track time is inspiring. It's just so fast, and we just have some amazing athletes out there. It's crazy. What do you want to talk about next, dude?
I'm just gonna pull up my list of stuff to talk about. So I wanted to have you on because you say you're not an expert in anything, but your like real time, like real life job does kind of make you an expert in one subject.
Yeah, so for those who aren't aware, in addition to being a musician, I'm also basically a social worker and workshop presenter for a nonprofit Indigenous organization. I should start by saying that I am a first generation Canadian, meaning yeah, my father wasn't born in Canada.
Oh,
Um,
mine neither.
um, but you know, I come from English and German heritage, and
Mm.
I am not Indigenous. But and I'm the only non-Indigenous person who works for my organization. And what we try to do, the Survivor Society, we try to provide emotional and cultural support to First Nations people and Indigenous people in general throughout BC and throughout Canada, with regards to Indian residential schools, the 60 Scoop, Indian day schools, and the issue of missing, murdered, and Indigenous women and girls.
Okay.
And so the principal task of my job right now is to provide workshops with a survivor, and we'll go into universities, schools, businesses, and we'll talk about the history and impacts of Indian residential schools. So what I'll normally do is I'll talk and frame it in a historical context, and then the survivor will be able to give their firsthand account of their experience at Indian residential schools, what their life was like before, what their life was like during, and what their life was like after Indian residential school. I should also say that I am using the phrase Indian in the context of historical. There's a lot of discussion about what terms are appropriate, of course. Basically, within Canada, the overarching current politically accepted term is Indigenous, and that covers First Nations, Métis, and Inuit. But these are distinct groups, and even within the context of First Nations people, there are over 600 bands that are unique and have their own individual cultures and identities, and there are something like 50 different unique languages. So this is not just a blanket entity that we're talking about here, but this is the legacy of the way our government has treated First Nations people is as one group. And so within the context of Indian residential schools, I have been very privileged and honored to be able to provide these firsthand accounts along with survivors to places to educate people. I've also provided emotional support at a number of hearings where, and a number of crisis counseling sessions as well, where I've been providing emotional support to survivors. So I've heard a significant number of testimonies and accounts of the abuses that happened at residential schools. This is not to say that this is my lived experience by any means, but just to say that I've heard these stories and that the experience is real. And you know, these schools closed as late as 1996, and that's still a recent part of Canadian history. That's only 25 odd years ago there, right?
Mhm.
And so I just wanted to make sure that we had some conversations in this perspective that, you know, I'm not the be all expert. I will acknowledge that, you know, I often refer to my colleagues for information, but, you know, I feel confident enough that I understand at least some of the history, and that it's worth talking about these things, that it's so important to have these conversations, because you know, when we see on the news all these kids popping up in unmarked graves, it's so heartbreaking, and we want to talk about it, and we want to make progress, and especially within Canadian culture as a whole, we want to fix these things all right away, and we want to get to the bottom of it and all this. And so uh, it's such a big issue, but it's such something worthwhile talking about, and it's something I've been working with since 2013. I've been in this position in particular, And so I'm ready to talk about this. And I think that while everyone should actively listen to First Nations people and Indigenous people in general about their experiences and about their lived conditions even now, I think that it's important for every Canadian to have a discussion and to learn about these issues and to read the Truth and Reconciliations Commission's recommendations. I think that this is such an issue that we can help with, and we can acknowledge, and we can make sure that the government is held accountable, and then even the churches are held accountable for what happened, because this is a real part of Canada that we don't want to just back away from. You know, it's so important to listen, but it's also important to learn and talk about and make sure we engage with people, because this isn't just a them issue. This is an all of us issue at this point. Yeah. And so, I mean, there's some current events, of course, that have been talking about this. And I guess I want to start by, just saying that when we are talking about this, we're talking about a system that, is still really fresh and has impacted every First Nations, Métis and Inuit in this country in one way or another, either at the personal level or the intergenerational level. And 150,000 kids went through the system. Like, that's half the population of Victoria, basically. And it, the kids on average were taken from the ages usually 4, 5, 6 years old. 1996, my kid's sister would have been 6 years old. Like, that's the perfect time that they would have taken a kid to residential school. And I can tell you from what I've heard directly from survivors, you'll hear some people say, of course, oh, I didn't have as bad as others. And so not everybody's experience at residential school is the same. But I can guarantee you that the instances of abuse and neglect are real and significant at these institutions. And I use the word institutions because, language is important, how we define things. It's like we're talking about the nature, or I was talking, yammering on, of course. We're talking about the words that were used. So Indian residential school, these weren't schools that were designed with First Nations people in mind. They were designed to assimilate First Nations people. So the supervisors weren't necessarily properly trained. The conditions weren't adequate. There was many instances of malnutrition, instances of disease experimentation with tuberculosis. And it's just crazy how oppressive these schools were. And not every school was the same, of course, but out of the, I think, 139 that are recognized by the government of Canada and the 700 odd institutions that had models like this throughout North America, it's intense. And these are real stories of people documenting the abuse with the TRC, documenting the abuse with the government, and documenting the abuse with their own communities and organizations like my own. And so, again, I can't speak for other people, but the fact that people were talking about this finally, I mean, I say finally, but like for me, it's only been 8 years working with this organization. But for Indigenous people, it's been like their whole lives and their parents' whole lives and their grandparents' whole lives, where they've known about these grave sites, where they've known about the abuses that have happened. And it's so people are focusing on this. People are waking up. Of course, we had the 215 that were discovered in Kamloops. We had that mass amount of 751 in Saskatchewan. And a significant other ones that are being discovered in both Canada and the United States. And this is, as some would say, just the beginning. Like there are estimates of 4 to 6,000 students that died at residential schools, and that was what was previously reported by the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. That's not to say what the final numbers are, and we may never know what those final numbers are because the records at these institutions were so bad, or they were hidden. And so we're finding that now with some of the records being released finally by the church, and we're seeing some movement and some discussion. And how did you feel, Dale, about Canada Day? How did you feel about the orange that was seen, about the seas of orange that people were wearing, who were carrying? How did you feel about hearing about these identifications?
Well, for me, the hardest part always was I learned about this stuff in college. I can't remember. Like, it wasn't like a course that I took and I learned about. It was just something that kept coming up. And for me, even before Canada Day, and when this all, like, once the Kamloops unearthing, I guess, I don't know how you say it without sounding terrible.
I think the issue is to say, you don't want to say discovery. You just want to say identification, because people know this was happening.
Mm-hmm. So once that happened and everybody like started finding out about it, the most surprising thing to me was that people in Canada knew nothing about this. Like, I had a friend being like, didn't people know their kids were gone? And I was like, oh, you don't know anything about this. That's horrible. So when they were like talking about canceling Canada Day before they actually did it, I was like, well, I don't know if we have to cancel the whole day, because my whole reasoning was we don't want it to be Indigenous people against Canada. Like, I want it to be an us thing. Like, we can't cancel Canada Day because we're all Canada. But then that minister spoke out, and then I heard like rumblings of people trying to dismiss.
Are you referring to the one from Iqaluit, or rather Nunavut?
No, I was talking to the one from Toronto. We talked about it last week. It was Monsignor, I can't remember his name, but he had said that nobody talks about the good things that happen in these schools. And then,
oh my goodness,
once that happened, I was like, okay, we need to cancel Canada Day, because it's not like it's
when you said
beyond.
Sorry, I should interrupt. When you said minister, I thought you meant like member of parliament. And I misheard, so I apologize.
No, that's fine. So my thing was, before that, it was like people didn't know, and you don't want to like shock the system. It's so hard, because it's like something that we all need to talk about. Like, it doesn't matter if we weren't personally attached to the whole travesty that happened, because we can help fix it and help move on. So we should all be talking about it. And then after that, Monsignor spoke and basically pled ignorance and like kind of advocated for ignorance of it. I was like, okay, we need to cancel Canada Day sort of as a shock, so people could be like, we can't just ignore this anymore. We can't just be like, oh, huff, huff, some good stuff happened. Some people didn't have it as bad. It's like, we kind of got to like get it out in the open. We all got to talk about it, and we got to figure out how to move on. Like, there was the, what was it, 94 calls to action that they came up with.
The Truth and Reconciliation Commission,
Yeah, so we should all be reading that. We should see how many of them we can personally affect. Like, if there's, like, I haven't read them all. I kind of was looking at it today, because I was like, oh, I should read these before the podcast, but I didn't know there's 94. So it's like, I can't read 94 and remember all these. But so it's something we should all like at least take a browse of and like get familiar with the subject matter.
And I think they did make a one-page summary that's lurking around somewhere. Okay. But I would have to look it up again. But yeah, the 94, I think, is about 20 pages total.
You can download the PDF online. Yeah, I'll put a link for that in the show notes after this. Kind of lost track of what I was talking about. Yeah. Oh no, that's fine. And then like the orange, like I bought a shirt. I think like I bought a Every Child Matters shirt. I showed it off on one of the podcasts before, which it's not like I'm saying, hey, I did this and I made a difference. I'm like, oh, this is an easy way. That's like an $18 hindrance to me, but I can help make a difference. And this is a good spot to start. And then
Well,
every time I wear the shirt, people will see it.
yeah, talking about the orange shirt. So first of all, awareness. Phyllis Webstead, Jack, she went to residential school, and she went in an orange dress, and they took away the orange dress. They cut her hair. They did all the things they normally do in terms of processing someone into that institution, and she never got to see that orange dress again. And of course, within the context of residential school, it was that system of assimilation. And so that symbol of the orange shirt, for the Orange Shirt Society, is one that's very prominent. They are the Orange Shirt Society, started Orange Shirt Day, started the slogan, "Every child matters." And I know there's discussion over that slogan, but the simple crux of it is every child does matter, especially in this case, the Indigenous children that didn't make it home from residential school and those survivors that did. And so when you wear that orange shirt, you're spreading awareness. And if you buy the orange shirt from someone who is either being charitable with the money or of indigenous ancestry themselves, you are contributing to positive Indigenous projects and communities. So if that's the case, that's the thing. But even the awareness itself is important for having this conversation. My sister, she has a 3-year-old, and she was out walking, and they were wearing orange. And this was before Canada Day, and somebody came up to them and said, "Thank you for wearing orange." And my nephew was really confused, and he was just like, why is she thanking me? And so she had to take the time to talk to her 3-year-old and say, like, this is what happened at these schools. And I can't imagine how tough that conversation would have been for her, because it's so heavy, but it's so important. And he grasped it right away. He got it. He got that it was wrong. He said, "I don't want that to happen to me." And like, it just breaks my heart hearing about it. But like, the truth of this is something even kids can talk about and understand, at least at a cursory level, just how wrong these institutions were. And if we have this awareness, if we talk about this, if we make efforts to work with First Nations communities and people, we can have better chance of those ideals we talk about for Canada that we want to. The reason why we don't want to cancel Canada Day is because we want to stand up for these good things, right? But there's no sense in having a party when you're also having a funeral, and it's rough, man. I don't know, and so of course, the reason why we're bringing this up is so people had these memorial events for the children who didn't make it home from residential school. And it's I never understand why people would think it was okay that schools were designed with graveyards in mind. It just doesn't, that's clearly something that says, no, red flag, not a good idea. But the reason why we're talking about this, of course, is that there were instances across the country recently of vandalism, simply put. And I guess I'll let you talk about more of the details of it. But significant damages to statues, and even one totem pole in Victoria near the Malahat.
Yeah, this is actually one of the reasons, like, some people right now who, after you went through all that, which was very informative, a lot of people are like, why is this discussion on the end of my Dick and Fart podcast? And the reason is because it's like, I didn't want to have this discussion, not because I'm scared to talk about it or anything, but because I didn't want to basically sully the subject matter with what it's sandwiched next to. So actually, Wesley had talked to me a while ago. He was like, if you want me to come on and talk about this on a segment on the podcast, I will. And I was like, oh, I don't know. I feel like it might get lost in like the poo-poo humor, basically. But then, like, I was talking about that Monsignor in Ontario, and then these statues getting busted. And it feels like it was like a subject that keeps making its way onto the podcast. It's something that people are upset about and everybody's outraged. And so I just kind of I was like, fine, let's do it. Let's have this big conversation, because I can't really say we should all be talking about this when I'm not willing to talk about it on the podcast. So that's basically why it's here.
Yeah, and I don't mean to
Yeah.
bum anybody out by these conversations.
Mhm.
I remember when I first started with my organization, I actually got kicked out of a house party one time because
Oh, really?
this one person was just like, "Don't talk about that stuff here." And I guess that
Mhm.
was like 2015 or something like that happened. And
Yeah.
it's not easy, it's not
Mhm.
comfortable things, but this is part of Canada, and it's affecting all of us right now.
Yeah.
And you know what? And this may sound like an oversimplification. Some First Nations people are awesome. They're wonderful to hang out with. They're wonderful to talk to. They're some of the funniest people you ever meet. They're very like, I mean, they're people. They are worth the time. They're worth caring about, just like anyone is. Even your family, even your friends. It's First Nations people are part of the Canadian society, and it's not, I say First Nations people, but there are so many different um, cultures in Indigenous communities that we blanket with these terms. And so,
Mhm.
like, yeah, this is something we want to talk about, because this is a great cultural mosaic we have that we want to take and recognize. If someone's hurting, we want to be supportive, right? And I don't know about you, but like, even the concept of a child of any ethnicity is getting hurt upsets me. And
Mhm.
so, when we talk about this, we talk about people being reactionary, right? We talk about the reactions of hearing these news, and people wanting. I mean, how many Facebook posts have I seen about saying either tax the church, or basically create trials and punish all these people who worked at the residential schools, or people who are very vocal about you know extreme change and notions.
Mhm.
And so you see these actions, and I'm not saying that these attitudes are wrong or right. I'm just saying these are the reactions I'm seeing out of some people sometimes. And so
Yeah.
you see these, and then you see people who are pulling down statues. So you got the one at Ryerson, you got Queen Victoria being thrown paint on. You had Queen Victoria and Queen Elizabeth in Winnipeg being torn down. I think there was one in Saskatchewan too. And then, of course, the churches being burnt down throughout BC, mostly Catholic institutions, not to mention vandalism in Vancouver and other places in BC on Catholic churches. And of course, the one that I don't know if it's been getting enough attention is the attempted burning of the totem pole on the Malahat on Vancouver Island. And personally, I don't know. Like, I think statues are stupid in general. I just think
Mhm.
public art installations are way more effective of spreading community
Yeah.
enthusiasm. But regardless, I mean, this is the other thing too, is I wonder if, like, Canadians are sometimes reactionary because of the way Americans are reactionary, or if it's authentically Canadian. But either way, this is intense what's happening. I mean,
Mhm.
statues getting teared down, things getting burnt. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, one of the ones you didn't mention, I'm not pointing it out, is Captain Cook, which was on the island, which
Yep, that was downtown Victoria.
yeah, personally, I don't know how much he would have had to do with residential schools, if anything, but like, he's a terrible person in his own regard. Like, he actually ended up dying in Hawaii because he had an altercation with the indigenous people of Hawaii, and he was basically being a dickhead, so they killed him. So, and my thing with the Queen Elizabeth 1 and 2 statues that got ripped down, it's like, it's a touchy thing, but I think it might be the point where we go, as a country, we kind of band together and go full independence. Like, it's hard to talk about like residential schools without getting into like colonization and stuff like that. And like, maybe like First Nations peoples, like their culture being suppressed by the people who came in and colonized them. So one thing that would probably help, and even help Canada get its own identity, is to leave the Commonwealth and not have this like weird quasi monarchist thing where it's like we're our own independent country, but we still have the queen on our money because she could still, there's some rules on the books that she could somehow change what we do over here with like the lieutenant general or something. I mean, it's been grade 9 since I heard about this, but I think what we could do is we could just get rid of that altogether, and that would actually probably help the healing in a sense, because it would be severing the ties from basically what started everything, and that was like the
Yeah.
colonization.
I mean, I think at a constitutional level, that's a lot of work.
Yeah, well,
And
I'm not saying
so,
it's going to be easy.
and I think that there are enough loyalist boomers out there still that
Mm-hmm.
you're not going to see that change, at least until there's a huge generational shift.
Yeah.
But that's just my opinion. I think the thing of it though is like Britain in a lot of ways has washed its hands of Canada. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
sure, they're going to make a comment saying like, "Oh, maybe don't tear down statues of Queen Elizabeth, please." But we feel bad for Indigenous people. But like Britain doesn't care. Britain
Mm-hmm.
doesn't have anything to do with this anymore, except for maybe some trade. And I'm being maybe hyperbolic in that sense, but the legacy of colonialism is now a Canadian thing.
Yeah.
And so it's, I don't know, man. Like, I think the thing for me right now, the interesting focus is like, you've had apologies. So the last one from the government of Canada was 2008 with Stephen Harper, and prior to 2008, every other denomination that was involved with residential schools has formally apologized for their involvement with the residential school system. So we're talking Anglicans, Methodist, Presbyterian, United. We're the only one who has not formally apologized is the Catholic Church. And there have been instances of apologies. So the Archdiocese of Vancouver recently apologized. Same thing with a bishop in Kamloops, rather. And the Pope made a very lukewarm acknowledgement that people were really pissed about of the people of Kamloops. But it was very paternal and very disrespectful to First Nations people, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not necessarily representative of everyone. But the other thing too is like, not all First Nations people have the same beliefs. Not all of them feel the same way about issues. But I think the one thing that First Nations people agree on is how devastatingly horrible Indian residential schools were. And so when you see this, you kind of wonder whether or not these instances of vandalism are justified, or if they're acts of aggression, or if they're motions by non-Indigenous people, or if that these are symbols that need to be taken down, if these are symbols that are as oppressive as civil war racists, right?
Mm-hmm.
This, if I had to walk past somebody who was like entirely responsible for like degrading my family every day, I'd be pissed. I'd be so mad.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm speaking from a position of privilege here. We need to amplify Indigenous voices and get their opinions on these things. Again, I come back to it. In truth of the matter, it's just a friggin' statue. Like, don't make any more statues, and invest in public art, invest in people.
Mm-hmm.
It's like there's better things to do than hero worship somebody who's going to inevitably have problems. I don't know. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm the same way. Like, I don't really see, like, on one hand, like, we talked about this at length, I think maybe 1 or 2 years ago, when the whole tear down John A. Macdonald statue started, like that discussion started. And my whole point was, it's like, in the end, it's just a statue, like you've been saying, and it doesn't matter. But you can't deny iconography and what the face of basically an oppressor would do in the mind of a person. Like you said, if you're walking by a statue of the person that's held down your family, it's just gonna, like, even if you're not conscious of what it's doing to you, there's somewhere in your heart, like your heart of hearts, that feels a little bit of pain every time you see that face. So should we get rid of all these statues? Maybe. Like, I'm not saying we should or we shouldn't, but we should definitely open a discussion about it. Like,
Yeah,
why do we have a statue of Captain Cook? It's like a good way to see this is not necessarily the Civil War statues in the States, but the Christopher Columbus stuff. Like, we've had a whole paradigm shift on Christopher Columbus to the
yeah.
point where, like, everybody's starting to recognize that, hey, this guy was a dickhead. We don't need to have these statues of him. And I'm not saying like get rid of all the Christopher Columbus statues or whatever, because I don't think we have any in Canada. But that all came about because people started airing their grievances and talking about it. And it's not like it was like a 200 or a 300-year secret that Christopher Columbus was a dickhead. It was just people weren't talking about what he did that was so bad. And then eventually people were like, look, we need to talk about what happened and what was bad. And then everybody's like, all right, that is bad. We should get rid of him. We'll rename Columbus Day. We'll get rid of all this stuff pertaining to him. And that's something we should be doing up here. Like, should we have statues of Queen Elizabeth I and II in Winnipeg for whatever reason they're there? Should we, like, they've started renaming schools and stuff, which is good. Like any problematic person who had something named after them, they're renaming them, which is fine. Like, people think it's weird because people think it's more of a big deal than they did. Like, I think, where was it? There used to be in
Well, yeah.
Ontario, there used to be like a name of a little town after every major city in the world. So I think we had Hamburg, Ontario or something. But when World War II happened, we just changed the name because we didn't want that problematic thing. So it was like, it's something as obvious and easily done as that. This all this other stuff with these statues can be the same way, where it's like, we did love these characters once, we found out they're problematic, so now we're going to get rid of them.
And the other thing too is while it's very important to acknowledge these things and have conversations, the more important conversation is the quality of life of all Canadians, especially Indigenous people in this instance. So, you know, it, changing a street sign does not clean the water systems that are impacting Indigenous communities. Changing the statue does not promote education within our public school system to provide adequate history on First Nations peoples. Those are things that are way more important in the sense that we're talking about the real experience. Education and awareness is like crucial, and that's part of the reason why I do the job I do, is because I think that helping people in need is important. And talking about this history, I mean, I don't know about you talked about it being when you were in college, but I think we had like half a page on First Nations history in my social studies textbook, and like,
Yeah.
that's not good enough. Like, this is real Canadian history. This is not even Canadian history, it's real current Canadian society. And I mean, I don't know, Canada has a really weird legacy for reshaping its identity, because we've got so much in terms of ridiculous things that we don't talk about. So there's the Chinese head tax, there's the Chinese building the railway, there's the Komagata Maru, there is the internment of the Japanese during the Second World War. And like, these are just some of the issues that pertain to marginalized communities in Canada that we kind of gloss over with our Canada is so friendly, so nice, and so peaceful. And I mean, it's not changing anything. We still have these ideals, but we have to keep perspective, and we have to keep talking about things in a way that's meaningful. And I think that's more important than a statue. or changing the name of a street sign. Yeah, it's and maybe I'm letting people off the hook. Maybe as you know, what's the idiot from the Conservatives' name? Is Aaron O'Toole?
Yeah.
He was talking about like, this is not the way we do reconciliation. So, what is reconciliation? Why is a white guy dictating what the face of reconciliation should look like? I think Aboriginal consultation or in working with Indigenous communities is so important. And if we're going to talk about these issues, we don't want to, like, we've been talking with the same brush for years, right? Like that's why
Yeah.
we have the way the Indian Act works. It's and like I don't know, man. It's I think for some, it's a shame that it took finding dead kids for people to wake up to the way we talk about Indigenous people in this country. It's a shame that it wasn't something sooner. But at the same time, at least we're here. At least we're talking about it. And yeah, thank you for taking the time to talk about this too.
Hey, no problem. I mean, it's the least I could do. I want to pretend like our podcast, sorry, has a giant reach, but any way I could get the word out, I'm more than happy to. And I just wanted to point out before you were talking about the clean waters thing, there are First Nations communities in Canada right now who don't have clean drinking water, and that is a separate subject, but it's still something we should be talking about. Like everybody in Canada should have access to clean drinking water. I mean, we've got oceans on three sides. We've got more fresh water in Canada than any other country in the world. We should be able to give these people clean water. And that's something you could focus on if you need to.
Yeah.
But what
do you think that people who get caught inevitably, I mean, it's hard to know whether or not the police will find people who tore down statues or burnt the churches or burnt the totem pole. It's hard to know whether or not they'll prosecute them. But do you think that this should be the resources we're spending to find these people? Should we how and then like what are the outcomes that are going to happen for people who are like potentially charged with burning down or not burning down, but tearing down a statue? Like, let's say there's photo evidence of somebody who tore down a statue in Victoria of Cook in front of the Empress Hotel. They have the statue, they've torn it down. Boom, they find this person. Like, what's going to happen to that person? What should happen to that person?
I think they get charged with vandalism, but I don't know, because I don't know if that would actually damage the statue, just tearing it over, because I'm pretty sure
they threw it into the bay or the harbor there.
Well, I mean, it's made out of copper or bronze or whatever, so you could just pick it up basically and put it back. So I think they'll get charged with like vandalism, but it's not like they shattered like $100,000 worth of stuff. Like when it comes to the end of it, it's like that statue's still a statue. It might have a couple dents, but like the money figure of the damage that's done to that statue isn't gonna be as high as, say, burning down a church or something. So I feel like, I don't know, like I've never heard of, although I haven't really looked into it too much, like when they were tearing down statues of John A. Macdonald, like I was talking about before, I never heard what happened to the people who actually tore it down. I don't know if it's kind of like it was a mob, people got like up at it, or if they like throw the book at one particular like ringleader of it. It's hard to say. Like, I think,
yeah, it's a tricky topic. I mean, the reason why I bring it up is because like these are realities we're gonna have to deal with in the next coming weeks. Is like, let's say there's a dude who does get charged. What's the government going to decide? What are the mayors? What are the police going to decide is their political obligation? You know, and so I would say more than anything, my opinion is watch your political figures, watch your police very closely, because it will be very telling how Canada, how each city is committed to reconciliation based on their reactions.
Yeah. And I guess another thing, a closing point I would like to say is just stand together. Like, we're all one people. Yeah. And the way groups of people are beaten is they're divided by the powers that be, whether it's someone who wants to keep this quiet or something. Like, the easiest way is to get infighting in the group. But if we don't let that happen and we all kind of persist at wanting to talk about this and move forward with it, then we will. So, yeah.
Exactly. And I think, as I said, although it's devastating to hear about these graves and all the children that died at residential schools, ultimately focusing on these issues and working with Indigenous communities will be for the benefit of us all. And I think that it's something we need to focus on, returning these kids home, because there never should have been grave sites at these schools. And we need to focus on improving the lives of Indigenous communities and all Canadians in this sense. And so, that's kind of my 2 cents. And I do appreciate you taking the time, Dale. I know it's not an easy topic, and I know it's 2 white guys talking, but these are real issues.
Yeah, it's like what I said before. It's like I didn't want to bring it up because I felt like I would somehow disrespect the content of the discussion. But on the other hand, you got to bring it up because it's something everybody should be talking about.
And I've seen it brought up on hockey podcasts. I've seen it brought up on by businesses. This has gotten international attention, and it's good. It's good that people are talking about it. It's sad as all hell, but it's good people are talking about it.
Yeah. I guess before we go, I just wanted to ask you, is there any way you know of that people can like kind of help out either financially or like volunteering their time or anything?
Yeah. I'm not about to tell people what to do, but at the same time, I'll tell people what to do. It's, you want to actively listen to Indigenous people when they're talking about these histories. You want to amplify Indigenous speakers and organizations. There's friendship centers all across this country who could use support. There's also groups like the Survivor Society who operate international crisis lines, or not international, but national crisis lines. And, right now these crisis lines are 24 hours. So like there's a lot of people who need support. And so these organizations could use support. There are organizations for Indigenous people who are suffering. So a lot of people don't realize that it's not like all First Nations people live on the res or anything. There's a huge Indigenous urban population. And that's to say that, people in our city of Vancouver need support. And so these are organizations that exist. And with a couple Google searches, you can find the organizations in your area. But the Survivor Society, Reconciliation Canada, and friendship centers are good places to start. There's organizations like the Aboriginal Mother Center, which is a great one. Financial donations are great, and they have options for monthly donations too. But also, working beyond that, reading the TRC's recommendations, and there are shorter summaries, and trying to implement them, talking to people, writing to members of parliament, or writing to local officials makes a difference, right? If you keep doing that, you'll get somebody's attention. And that's important, being actively vocal. And I guess the last one too is, and this is something regardless of the community, it's important to stand up to prejudice. It's important to stand up to instances of stereotype, and to, not let people to suffer on their own. Don't turn a blind eye if there's something going on. We want to make things better. And so it takes a bit of action. It doesn't take an arm and a leg. Nobody's asking you to sacrifice anything, but they're asking you to step up, so to speak. And I think that's the least we as Canadians can do. So,
okay, cool. Thanks a lot. Thanks for sharing all your knowledge, and that was great. And I'm
sorry to yammer on about things. I know I'm getting a little more detail than I probably should.
It's detail people should know. Actually.
Yeah, if anyone does want to learn about the organization, the website is irSSS.ca. But again, the TRC has information, and there is the At UBC, there is the Indian Residential School History and Dialogue Center. And then there in Winnipeg, there's the National Center for Truth and Reconciliation, which are immense educational resources and record keeping. So if you want to learn about it, it's there. There is tons of history, tons of documentation on this issue. So, yeah.
All right. That's good to know. I'll put links to all these places in the show notes. So if you're listening to this or watching this on YouTube, just go to the description and you can find a link there. Yeah. So it's kind of weird to just give
I want to say before we stop,
mm-hmm.
These are tough topics we've talked about in every sense of the word. Take the time to decompress, take the time to debrief. I know it sounds hippy dippy, but self-care is so important. You want to make sure that, you know, you can function, you can interact and engage with people in a positive way. So just take the time to ground yourself, be that some deep breathing, going for a walk, talking to somebody else about what you learned about. Decompressing, debriefing can really help in terms of dealing with emotion. And even if that emotion is not like right on the surface, just taking the time, because this ain't easy what we're talking about. So yeah, thank you again. But even you, Dale, take the time, make sure you're in a good place, because you know, we want you to be happy and healthy.
This is subject matter that is heavy on your heart, and you don't want it to affect the way you interact with someone. Like, I'm not going to go to the store and just go get in a big fight with someone because I'm in an emotionally vulnerable place. And like you were saying, it is good to take some deep breaths, maybe take some time to, like, even if you're not a meditative person, it's nice to just kind of sit in a room by yourself, or even if you have to go to, like, a good place to go is like your car or the bathroom, and then where people won't bug you, and just take like a couple minutes to breathe, let your thoughts kind of flow, see where they end up, and just calm, let yourself be calm and kind of try to process this, and don't let it drag you into the darkness, basically.
Yeah. And there's always someone to talk to, and there's always places to learn from and gather resources. So you're not alone. You're not alone in this. You know, there are resources. So remember that. And thank you again, Dale, for
no problem,
making the effort. So,
I think we're just going to end it there. I'm not going to do all this social media stuff. So everybody have a good day. And thanks again for teaching us all about this, Wes.
You got it. Yeah. Again, I'm not an expert, but I'm here for you.